Hello and welcome to Visual Basic tutorial number 8, and in this tutorial we're going to be covering arrays. Now an array is essentially a variable that holds multiple counterparts, and I'll explain that in a moment. I'll just show you something first. Now you've seen before how I've usually, when I've made programs, I've dimmed num1 as an integer and I've dimmed num2 as an integer. Now, say for instance that you've got 100 numbers that you need to store. There's no way that you're going to want to write out num1 to 100. That would take too long, it will take up too much space, and it'll be a nightmare to go back and find other variables that might be hidden in between all that. So this is where it'd be a good time to use an array. And an array basically, instead of dimming all 100 variables, you can dim just one variable and choose each section of that variable. It's almost like a section. It's quite hard to actually explain that, but I'm sure you'll see when I do this now, it'll make a lot more sense. So instead of dimming all these, let's skip there, and we'll open a bracket and say how many sections you want to dim. I'll dim 10, 100 will be too much, as integer. And now that's basically dimmed num1 to 10. And you can now store different values in the same sort of variable, only it's now an array. So you could write num1 equals 5 and num2 equals 10. And it's almost the same as how we did it before, only this time we're using open and closed brackets around the value of the num that you want to use or want to assign a value. And you can also do the same. We could now write num3 equals num1, and that's how you'd get values out of it. So it's pretty much the same. It shouldn't be too hard to get your head around, because it is pretty much the same as dimming them all individually. It's also important to note that arrays actually start from 0. So this is actually dimming num0, num1, num2, all the way up to num10. And you don't always have to use the 0 value, but it's always important to remember that they do actually start at 0. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little for count. Now, dim count as integer. Now you don't actually have to dim a count as integer, but it's always a good idea, because when you, say for instance, do for count equals 1 to 10, you don't actually have to dim this in order for this to work. However, if you do decide to use this variable again later on, it could cause problems. So we'll dim that back in. Okay, so now what we're going to do is assign all of the values from num1 to 10 the value of count. And that's going to be pretty simple to do. It only requires 3 lines of code, and we've already got the 2 in place here. So, as the count becomes 1, we want to dim num1 value 1. So basically, num1 will equal 1, num2 will equal 2, and num10 will equal 10. And we can do that by saying num, open bracket, count, equals count. And if that makes sense to you, then that's great. However, if it's not quite clear, then what's happening is, every time the for count increments, the value of count goes up by 1. So the first time it goes through, count equals 1. Then, num, which is dimmed up here as an array, num1, because count is equal to 1, equals 1. It then goes through to the next line and comes back round. Then count equals 2, and num2 equals 2. That's basically how that works. And now let's print them out to the screen just to check if this array has actually been assigned all of the values correctly. So for count equals 1 to 10 again. Oh, I don't know where that came from. For count equals 1 to 10. Console.writeLine num count. And don't forget your double brackets at the end, because this has got 2 brackets in another set of brackets inside of the console write line brackets, and that sometimes can cause trouble if you do miss out a bracket. but the compiler will tell you you have a mistake, so don't worry about that. Console.readline. We'll save this and then run it. And as you can see, it prints the values of 1 to 10 out to the screen. Okay, let's also now change this so it equals count plus 1, just so you can see the effect that it will have. Now I'm going to put brackets around here, but it might not always be necessary, but it's better to be on the safe side. So now it should go up in multiples of 2. Well, never mind, it starts at 2 and goes up to 11. We could also do is say times it by 2, and this is how it would go up in 2s. And then there we have it, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18 and 20. So hopefully you've gained a better understanding of what an array is and how you can use it. I mean, if we'd have used an array in our calculator program from before, it would have been, well, that we would have had to dim less numbers, and we can also add more numbers together. We could have added 5 numbers together with just using one declaration of a variable. So that's the tutorial on arrays. I hope that's been useful and you enjoyed it. Obviously, people can find a lot of enjoyment in writing code, and you know, it can be quite productive, and you do feel good about yourself if you have written a good program. So, yep, stick with it, subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you next time.